And today we'll be talking about a very interesting story. And this story is about a cow called Nandini. And also this story will discuss about Vishwamitra, how he became a sage from a king. So in our earlier videos, if you've not seen my earlier videos, I would recommend please refer to those in regards to that famous cow called Nandini. And the earlier videos did discuss about how Nandini was kidnapped by the Vasus, because of which Vasus were cursed to be born on earth. And then of course there was a whole story of how Ganga, the Devi Ganga, was married to King Shantanu. She bore him 8 sons who were actually the 8 Vasus, and she submerged all the sons except the last one into the holy river Ganges or Ganga, so that the Vasus could fulfill the curse of them getting born on earth and then go to their abode. But then the 8th Vasu, who was actually responsible for the kidnap of the cow Nandini from Vashishta's hermitage directly, he somehow could not be drowned in the river Ganga. And of course, I'm not going to get into that detailed story in this video. Please refer to that video. And then he came to be known as Bhishma and lived his life on this earth as Bhishma, of course without getting married, but then protecting the king Duryodhana and his kingdom Hastinapur. So that's another story. But today we'll be talking about the same cow Nandini, because of which the 8 Vasus were cursed and had to be born on this earth. But then today is another story related to the same cow Nandini. Now Nandini is a cow, it's a holy cow, it's a celestial cow who was born out of another celestial cow called Kamadhenu, which is the cow, the celestial cow of the king of the Devas, or the king of the gods, Indra. And Nandini belonged to the great sage Vashishta, and that's where she lived. So the story goes like this, that once there was a powerful king called Vishwamitra, and he was in the forest, and he had a very large army. And he, while roaming with his army, he accidentally reached the hermitage, the ashram as it's called in Sanskrit, of sage Vashishta. And once Vishwamitra saw the sage Vashishta, he bowed down to him, and the Muni or the sage or the Rishi gave him a seat. And then the sage invited the king Vishwamitra, the sage Vashishta invited the king Vishwamitra for dinner. And Vishwamitra went there for dinner with his entire army. Now here's the surprising thing. And of course, this story is coming directly from the Puranas, so I'll request you to have firm faith and belief in it. This is not fiction. So this cow, Nandini, again the same cow which we just referred about, was responsible for the Vasus, the 8 Vasus getting born on earth, was there in the hermitage of sage Vashishta. And the sage prepared all sorts of eatables from her milk and entertained the king Vishwamitra along with his entire huge army. And the king and the army was extremely pleased. And when they came to know about the divine power of the cow Nandini, they were pretty impressed. And then King King Vishwamitra asked sage Vashishta, or requested sage Vashishta, to hand over the divine cow Nandini to him. And he said, well, Nandini is a divine cow, and in place of Nandini, or in return for you giving me the cow, the divine cow Nandini, I'm going to give you 1,000 cows. So please let me have your cow Nandini, because she has divine powers. Because of her milk, you could entertain me and my entire huge army, which is just not possible through any other cow in this universe. So Vashishta said, this is my sacred cow, and so I cannot give this cow to you, and please keep your 1,000 cows with you. So he declined, and Vishwamitra said, well, instead of 1,000 cow, how about this? I'll give you lakhs or hundreds of thousands of cows, or any other number you like. Please give me your cow. And Vashishta said, well, I'm sorry, I'm not agreeing to this. I'm not going to give you my divine cow Nandini. And then the king Vishwamitra threatened the sage Vashishta. He said, well, if you don't give Nandini to me, I'm going to carry her away by force. And then sage Vashishta said, well, do as you like, but I am not going to give my cow to you. And then when finally sage Vashishta declined to give his divine cow to King Vishwamitra, the king ordered his army to carry the cow by fastening a cord around her neck and take her away by force. And the army, his soldiers, they followed the orders. They bound the cow with ropes and began to carry Nandini with force. At this, Nandini, the cow Nandini, of course, she was a divine cow. She had tears in her eyes, and her eyes communicated this to the ascetic, to the sage Vashishta. He said, well, are you going to leave me, sage Vashishta? These guys, the army men, the soldiers, have bound me with a cord, and they're dragging me away. And to which Vashishta replied, he said, well, Nandini, I would never like to part with you. I perform all my religious scriptures, not the scriptures, religious rituals through your milk. How can I let you go? I invited this king, Vishwamitra, as a guest. I honored him. I entertained his entire army and him as well with all the eatables prepared from your milk. And now he wants to carry you by force. So tell me, what can I do? I do not want to part with you. Now, when the cow heard these words from sage Vashishta, that's the time when she became very angry. And then, out of sheer anger, on that very moment, there were demons, strong demons, wearing armors, strong armors, and holding various weapons, came out of her body. And then these armored demon-like creatures destroyed the entire army of King Vishwamitra, and the king alone was left. He couldn't do anything, so he had to leave, very disappointed and very sorrowful. And at that point, and the purpose of this story is to basically communicate the power of penance, the power of penance over power of force, the power of the Brahmana power, or the power of Brahmana energy over the power of Kshatriya energy. And Brahmana, of course, are the sacred people if you consider the caste system, they're the Brahmanas, who are priests or the priest class, and the Kshatriyas are the warrior class. So this story is going to communicate how the power of penance is more powerful than the power of force, or the power of a Brahmana is more powerful than the power of a Kshatriya or a soldier. So, and at that point, the King Vishwamitra, he realized that the Kshatriya power or the soldier power is not as strong as the priestly power or the Brahman power. And at this very moment, he renounced his Kshatriya dharma, his dharma of being a soldier. He renounced that. And he went into the woods because he was so disappointed, he was so humiliated that his army could not do anything and carry the cow by force. He started to perform penance and tapasya, which is meditation and austerities. And then eventually the story goes that he becomes a rishi. The gods were pleased with him, and then he was also made a Brahma rishi. A Brahma rishi is the highest level of a rishi, which was given to him by sage Vashishta himself. And that's a whole long story, how he had a problem with sage Vashishta for a long part of his life, and how he wanted to become a Brahma rishi comparable to sage Vashishta, and he wouldn't get that level or that status of a Brahma rishi, and eventually he got it through his sheer penances and his sheer tapasya, or his sheer penances and his sacrifices and austerities. That's the better word. So this is how he eventually reached that level. So this story from the Puranas tells us that yes, the power of penance and austerities is much more powerful than the power of force, which is represented through the Kshatriya power or the soldier power. And as time goes along, King Vishwamitra actually turned into the sage Vishwamitra, and eventually the Brahma rishi, or the highest sage Vishwamitra, and he was the one who was given the knowledge of the Gayatri mantra, because goddess Gayatri showered her blessings on sage Vishwamitra, gave him the Gayatri mantra, and he was the first sage who gave the Gayatri mantra to this world. And that's another story, we'll not get into that. So hopefully you enjoyed this little story from the Puranas, and in the meanwhile I will recommend subscribe to my channel and check out my website. There is a link below, and I will see you soon with the continuation of stories from the Puranas very soon. Goodbye.